is Barrett. I've been working at my current position for about a year and a half now. And several months back, I decided I'd like to start applying to graduate level business programs. And in order to do that, I need to take the GMAT. And so I recently scored a 720 on the GMAT, which I was very happy with. And so I thought it might be helpful to talk about my journey in preparing, and more specifically, how target test prep helped me to achieve the score that I wanted. The score that I wanted when I first started came from, researching, the average GMAT test score of students at the institutions that I was interested in. So that ranged from about 690 to 740. I didn't really have a specific score in mind. I thought that if I could just get anything within that range, that would be enough for me. I did something that I think a lot of people do, and that's I started with official test materials because, I schedule the test on the website. It offers you practice materials, and it's very plausible that, all you really need is study material from the official test makers. And while it was helpful, and I think I would have performed worse without it, I did really need something more in depth in terms of content in order to get me across the finish line. I realized this when I took my practice test, which was about 2 weeks from my first official scheduled test. And I did really poorly. I actually didn't finish because I had a poor mentality going in. My content knowledge was not enough to really get me anywhere close to the range that I was hoping for. And I didn't really put myself in a quiet setting when I started the practice test. And so about halfway through, I was feeling really bad. And I thought, I don't know if it's productive for me to really continue. I didn't know if I was really going to learn anything from the score that I got in this practice test. And so I took the rest of the evening to myself. And then the next day, I started to reassess how I was practicing. Why is it that I felt that I didn't know, what I was really being tested on? And I think it started with the test materials. I needed something that was a bit more in depth. And so I started researching online, what resources other people were using to get good scores. And I came upon a Reddit page, and a user in particular said that target test prep really helped them with the data sufficiency questions in particular. And the data sufficiency questions really gave me a hard time during the practice test. And furthermore, the quantitative section was always going to be my weak point because I find myself doing better with grammar-related topics and reading comprehension, that sort of thing. And it put extra stakes on it that graduate level business programs really highly value the quantitative section. And so I knew I had to do better. So that was enough to entice me to go to Target Test Prep's website and try it out. During the trial period, it asked me a couple questions about my experience and what my goals were, and it crafted a study plan for me. I didn't plan in advance and didn't give myself a ton of time to prepare before my scheduled test. And so I knew that I would probably have to schedule a second one and try again. I went through about 4 chapters of the quantitative and 3 chapters of the verbal. And by that point, it was time to take the first official test. I came back to this one with my previous experience with the practice test in mind. I came with a fresh mentality, knowing that I probably wasn't going to get the score that I wanted, and was content to do my best and take this test experience as data at best. Right? My mentality was a lot better going into this test, and I earned a 610. Which obviously was well below the range that I was hoping for. I believe my verbal score was in the 50th percentile, so middle of the road, and my quantitative was the 33rd percentile. So really not where I need to be. So I scheduled a second official test about a month after my first one, knowing that I have a lot more time now to kind of target the spots that I really needed work on. The quantitative material in target test prep is really what got me across the finish line because um, not only were there so many different topics to cover, but each lesson within the topic um, gave you in depth information that, as long as you're studying it carefully, you really can't go wrong. And it's very difficult to not improve. I learned so much going through each of the lessons. I reserved about, I'd say, 2 or 3 days per lesson. The quicker lessons or the quicker sections that only had, a handful of lessons I could get done in about one day. Though I did come back occasionally to do the practice tests at the end of each section. I didn't do all of the practice tests, but those were incredibly important for the areas that I were particularly weak at. For example, geometry was something that I was completely lost in when I started. Thankfully, Target Test Prep had this really long section on geometry. It was about 70 or 80 lessons. I went through that. I dedicated about 3 days to really grind through those lessons. And the practice tests are really what helped me gain confidence when I took my second test. When those questions came up, I felt more comfortable answering them. While I didn't spend as much time on the verbal lessons just because I felt more comfortable, I would still highly recommend Target Test Prep if people are interested in the verbal section, because beyond just intuition and the knowledge that you've built through whatever courses that you've taken in the past with respects to, reading comprehension, grammar, critical thinking, that sort of thing, the content in there pushes past intuition and really gives you kind of an insider's look on what the test makers are looking for with specific questions. For example, I remember going through the sentence correction lessons, thinking that I knew just about everything that I needed to. And it gave me a lot of insight about how certain questions are constructed in order to make people fall into, trap answers or really test a specific kind of thinking with respect to grammar. So I would really recommend the verbal section lessons and the quantitative sections, even though I spent more time on the quantitative. When it was time to take the second official test, I had gone through all of the quantitative and I had done a handful of the verbal sections. In the 3 to 4 days leading up to it, the last thing that really helped me within Target Test Prep was the customized problem sets. And so, going through each of these at, I would say, a quicker pace. If I could do it all again, I would give myself more time. The weaker spots, the weaker lessons that I had, I could incorporate in these customized problem sets. And I judged which sections of mine were weak sections based on how confident I felt. And so I selected those as part of the problem sets. You can select easy level questions, medium level questions, and hard level questions. I selected all level difficulty, selected all the topics that I didn't feel confident in. And after going back and taking the test, it shows you, firstly, which ones you got correct. And then if you got it incorrect, it shows you, the exact method behind getting the answer correct, which was so helpful. This really put me in the mindset that I could get the score that I wanted, just as long as I was putting enough elbow grease in. And I felt that the work that I had put in the past month between the first test and the second test was enough. So not only was it content knowledge that was really helpful with Target Test Prep, but it really put me at ease in terms of taking the test, which I think is great for anybody that, gets anxious with taking tests. And then at the second official test, I looked over some things really quickly that morning. I took the train to the test center, and I got a 720. And it was something that, I really felt like was a watershed moment for me. I felt immensely grateful to the people around me and also target test prep because, without that, I think it would have taken a lot more time to get the score that I wanted, and I wouldn't have maybe gotten my applications in on time with a ideal score. So I don't think I could recommend target test prep more strongly. I think without using that service, the score that I got doesn't happen. And so I think anybody considering what sort of study materials they should be using for the GMAT should absolutely consider target test prep. I hope this was helpful for anybody that listened.